Okay, well, hello everybody. It's Professor Cañedo here, and it's time for another fun-filled nuts and bolts video. And in this video, I want to talk a little bit about the SLO assignment. This is the California Missions assignment. It's called it's SLO, short for a student learning outcome. And this is something that's new for this class. And I've been doing this for the last few years for the for my Mesa College section, the Chicano Studies 141A class. But because SLOs are something that's kind of important now with respect to measuring how people engage in critical thinking, interpreting what are called primary documents. So there's something that's relatively new for new for this class. Even though I've been doing these SLOs for my Mesa and Grossman classes. But for the summer session, I added it to this class. I'm going to keep using it for future sections of this class, and also when I do the 142 class. But even though the term itself might seem daunting and it might seem a little bit strange, although I'd imagine that many of you in the class have probably come across these SLOs in some of your other classes. This is actually going to be the assignment in which you really don't do a lot of writing. In other words, this is the assignment that has the least amount of writing for the session. Everything else for the class, like the EBSCO book and U.S.-Mexico War assignments, those are the ones where you have a little bit more extensive writing. So in this one, it's more where you engage in critical thinking, and you interpret documents. You interpret these sources that is according to your point of view, your perspective, your own ideas and so forth. So without further ado, let me go ahead and tell you what it's about. And as you can see right now, I've got the assignment section already queued up for you. So let's go ahead and scroll down to the listing for the SLO assignment or SLO exercise, and I've already got the worksheet queued up here. I'll open that up in just a second. But first, let me quickly go over the couple of ground rules. This assignment is going to be due on a Monday. So Monday, July 25th, the last Monday of the session, July 25th at midnight or 11:59 p.m. Make sure you get that into me on Monday the 25th. And keep in mind that no late submissions for this assignment will be accepted. So all your papers have to be submitted by Monday the 25th. No exceptions. And the other key point to keep in mind is that unlike the other assignments, like the book review, the U.S.-Mexico War assignment, and the EBSCO review, in which you're sending in files, you're sending in documents to me, for this one, you don't have to do that. You just have to write your answers directly into Blackboard, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. So again, the two main things to keep in mind before I talk about the parameters of the assignment itself. Again, this is due Monday, July 25th. And in this one, you write your answers directly into Blackboard. No need to send a file for this particular assignment. So let's go ahead and open up the file, and I'll show you what everything's about. Now, first off, you notice right here that we've got some conflicting dates here. Please don't pay attention to these dates I have here. This is something that I've been using for the that I've been using for my Mesa College classes. So I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to change this here. And of course, definitely disregard the February 26th date. It's the date, of course, is July 25th. So July 25th, not February 26th of this year or February 26th of 2017. No. It's definitely July 25th, so the last Monday of the session, and and disregard what I have here. Disregard what I have here at number 5. Don't send me a file. Again, just type your answers directly into Blackboard, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second here. Now, here's the objective for this assignment with the idea of this SLO. That is, this measures the idea of critical thinking. So in other words, you're to look at files, at documents, at pamphlets or primary sources and interpret them according to your point of view. So in other words, you get to, in essence, play historian for this particular assignment. Now, what we mean by primary documents or primary sources, these are things which are, shall we say, historical documents, but from that time. Let me give you a prime example of what I mean. When Dr. Martin Luther King gave his famous speech in 1963, of course, I Have a Dream. That's what we consider to be a primary source. That is, from Dr. King's mouth, his own words, his own ideas. That's something that he's saying in 1963. And historians in the years after that have, of course, written articles. They've written books about Dr. King, his life and times, and of course, the speech itself. What historians write about when they're talking about Dr. King and his speech, those are what are called secondary sources, meaning that these are historians or political scientists, and they're interpreting what Dr. King says according to their point of view. But when Dr. King gives a speech in 1963, that is, it's coming from him directly. That's called a primary source. Likewise, too, if you look at some of the examples of American artwork that came about in say 1776, 1777. They depict George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, scenes of the Revolution, of course, him crossing the Delaware River. Those are what we can consider to be primary sources too, in that they in essence they were produced around that time when people like Washington, Hamilton, and many of the others of the Revolutionary era were around at the time. But when you have historians write about George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and others, let's say they wrote these books, say in say 1940, 1950, 1977, you get the idea. Those then are what we consider to be secondary sources. But for when Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, or he drafted it in 1776, because it's Jefferson's work, that then is considered to be a primary source. So what I'm going to have you do right here is look at look at four different primary sources relating to the California mission system. And what I mean by primary sources in this context is I've got two documents, two written works which came about during the time that the mission system was going on, and also two paintings which maybe in essence aren't directly primary sources, but they depict what life looked like back in those days. That is, when the California mission system was going on. So let me scroll down to what the sources are all about, and then I'll tell you exactly what it is you need to do. So we're going to skip up. We're going to skip this here, and I'll come back to all of this in just a second. The first primary source is this 1844 painting of Father Narciso Duran and a child at the mission San Jose. So what you're to do here is to look at it, tell me what you think the main elements are. That is, who's in charge here? Who is the powerful person here? What types of imagery do you see here? Obviously, you see Father Duran. He's definitely in a prominent position here, and the poor Indian child. It looks like a young girl. She's almost naked, so you can clearly see the disparity between the priest and the child. And of course, you see the cross here, and the table and the book. So obviously, Father Duran is a learned man, a scholarly man, and it looks like the implication here is that he's trying to impart not just Christianity but civilization. That is. Civilized society to the Indian girl, and also to her people too. So definitely a lot of important imagery going on here. So just look at this carefully and tell me what you think is going on here when you look at this painting of Father Duran. Now the second source is a written statement which came about in 1772, because one of the things that happened during the mission system was, of course, as the missions were being established by Father Serra and his Franciscan colleagues, is that they had to depend a lot on the Spanish soldiers to, in essence, protect the caravans as they went from mission to mission, and of course, not only protect the friars from maybe some of the more hostile nomadic tribes in California, but in essence protect the mission Indians too. Well, as Father Jaime points out in the 1772 statement, the Spanish soldiers weren't exactly, shall we say, the model citizens, so to speak. They engaged in some really, shall we say, nasty, dirty behavior. And in this document here, Father Duran is criticizing the behavior of the Spanish soldiers, basically pointing out that these men aren't exactly, shall we say, model Christians, and they're, you might say, wrecking the entire mission process, the objectives of what the missions are all about. So definitely, definitely read this source too, and uh, and take a close look at some of the things that Father Jaime talks about when he's pointing out what the soldiers are doing. Okay, source 3 takes us to 1786, and here we see a Frenchman, Jean-François Jean-François La Perouse, and what La Perouse is talking about is something comparable to what Father Jaime talks about in source 2, but in source 3, La Perouse is essentially criticizing what's going on in the mission systems in terms of how the friars are treating the Indian people. So, and because La Perouse is a Frenchman, he, of course, you might say, has a bit of hidden agenda in that, because he's not Spanish, and he had problems with Spanish people in the past. Maybe he might be exaggerating to a degree, but in any case, the point is that in 1776, Jean-François La Perouse is talking about what's happening in the missions, and in this case, he's talking about the mission, the plight of the mission Indians at the Carmel mission, of course, in toward north central California. Okay, and then last but not least, source 4 is another painting. And in this painting, which actually I think this painting was actually done in the 1960s or 1970s. I found this actually one of those tourism books that you get at the missions. I think it was the missions. It was the Ventura mission, the San Buenaventura, where I got the book, and it had this painting there. So technically, it's not really a primary source, but I think it does a good job of depicting what Indian life was like for some of the for some of the Indians working on the mission grounds. And the term for the Indians who were shall we say, learning how to become Christian. They were being indoctrinated in not only Christianity, but in the ways of the Spaniards, in the ways of the Europeans. These are the term as the neophytes. And the neophytes, as they were, shall we say, learning how to become Christians, they also learned how to tend to Spanish crops, and also learn how to use draft animals or beasts of burden like these oxen here. The California Indians had no tradition of working with these types of beasts of burden, but of course the Spaniards changed all that, and you can see by the reaction of these two men, an older man and a younger man, it looks like they're kind of struggling, trying to navigate these beasts. As these beasts as they're plowing fields. So there you have, everybody. These are your two sources, the two paintings and the two written statements. So what you need to do right now is answer a series of 3 questions. Okay, but uh, okay. So let's go back up here, and you've already read. You've already done all of this here, so you've completed step one. Step one already. Now, what you do right now is you answer the questions for 2, 3, and 2, 3, and 4. So that's what you have to do. Just answer the questions for numbers 2, 3, and 4. No need to answer for question 1, because question 1 is basically telling you, okay, everybody, look at the documents, look at the sources, and then which of course is the 2 paintings and the 2 written statements. So what you need to do right now in part 2 is answer or address what's called a thesis statement, or a thesis question. That is, a thesis statement states a theory, it states a hypothesis, it makes a statement or a generalization. Your job then is to prove that that statement is true. What makes this statement true? What makes this hypothesis true? And And what I'm asking you here is that how do these sources, and what I mean by sources is the four things I just showed you just a few minutes ago. How do these sources prove that the policies of the Spanish crown, of course, the Spanish Empire, all this is happening during the time of the latter part of the 18th century. It's King Carlos, King Charles. He's the main guy at this time in the second half of the 18th century. How do these sources prove that the policies of the Spanish crown and Franciscan officials directly contributed to the cultural destruction of the California native populations as the mission system was being established? So your job then is to prove that that statement is true, and to do that, tell me in at least 4 to 5 sentences how that statement is true. And to do that, you're to analyze. That is, you're to comment on any of the four sources that I showed you. And again, by sources, I mean all of these right here, from Father Duran to the Father Jaime, the La Perouse statement, and of course the painting of the neophytes. So by looking at those four sources, you tell me in 4 to 5 sentences what makes this statement true, that the Spanish crown and Franciscan officials directly contributed to the cultural destruction of the California Indian populations. And besides using your own judgment in analyzing the four sources, also you can use secondary sources too. So if there's anything in Between the Conquest, in the Between the Conquest book, that might have been helpful, some of the readings there that helped explain the mission system better, and some of the stuff that was going on, by all means mention that mention that as well. And again, explain in 4 to 5 sentences, but you can go a little bit more. So if you go more into 6 or 7 sentences to elaborate upon your thoughts, you can do that too. So that's the first thing you have to write on. You explain in 4 to 5 sentences how all of these sources, the sources outlined here, prove that this statement is indeed true. Okay, parts 3 and 4 are excuse me. Parts 3 and 4 are a little bit easier. That is, in terms of answering the question. So part 3 is articulate a cause or consequence of the mission system represented by the sources. In other words, what was the in other words, um, what was the cause, that is what led to the the development of the California mission system, or what was a consequence or result of the California mission system. So in other words, the four sources that I showed you, you look at those. Excuse me, everybody. Yeah, this constant changing in weather is definitely affecting my vocal cords a little bit right now. So of the four sources that you have seen, from those four sources, please tell me about something which leads to the origins, that is the development of the mission system, or what is a consequence of the mission system. And again, by event, what I mean by event is the California mission system itself. So keep the focus on the mission system. That is, when Father Serra and all his men, and of course the soldiers, to come into California and establish the chain of missions. Your job then right here is to tell me what was a cause of the mission system, or what was a consequence of the mission system. So use the four sources, or any of the outside sources too. Maybe something like the PowerPoint program that we had to talk about the mission system. You can mention that as too. And finally, the fourth part is to describe one historical personality involved in this event, that is the California mission system, and explain his or her significance in this event. So of course, Father Serra comes to mind, Father Jaime, as mentioned in the sources, or anybody else that's mentioned in the four sources that I showed you, or in any of the other readings too, especially anything from the Between the Conquest stuff. Okay, so there you have it, everybody. So again, your job then is to look at these sources. So these four items are called the sources. And then once you look at all the sources, then answer questions 2, 3, and 4. And to do that, let's go back into Blackboard here, and then we'll click the link. We'll click the link here, and then we go to the assignment submission section. Just click the right submission box, and then write your answers in this field here. So I would suggest that you put your answers in either outline form or bullet list form, just to keep your answers straight. So I know what part you're covering. So once you type in all your 3 answers, then just click submit, and you're good to go, and that pretty much covers it. So I know this video ran a little bit longer than I expected, but hopefully this clears up everything. This tells you exactly what you need to do for the assignment, and again, make sure you get your answers into me by Monday, July 25th. All right, everybody. So that should do it here. I think this is going to be the last. Well, actually, there'll be one more nuts and bolts video in which I talk about the U.S.-Mexico War assignment. That'll be one of the, but that'll be an earlier video. It's a video that I recorded either, I can't remember if it was from the this past spring, or it might have been the fall of 2015 semester, but still fairly recent. That'll explain everything you need to know about how that assignment works. All right, everyone. So that's it. We're getting close to close to the end here, and just hang in there. But before you know it, it'll be time to get ready for the fall semester. Another school year just on the horizon. Okay, everybody. That's it. You guys take care. You guys take it easy. Good luck the rest of the way as we start to wrap up the semester, the session, and I'll talk to you again very soon.